You're on.
Hey everybody, welcome on into the Clayshare studio. I am Jessica Putnam-Phillips, and tonight we have a really fun hand building tutorial for you. This is a great way to make something when you don't have a lot of tools or supplies. You don't really need a lot of fancy stuff. It's pretty straightforward, and it's this right here, this fabulously amazing footed heart plate is what we're going to make. And what do you need to make this? Well, you need some clay. I happen to have, well, 25 pounds, but you don't need 25 pounds. You only need about 4 pounds of clay. Roll out 5 if you're rolling out a big slab. Maybe roll out 10, you can make 2 of these. And you need something to use as a guide for your shape for this plate. I happen to have this. It was just Valentine's Day, and a lot of us have these little heart boxes floating around. If you don't have one, you could probably go to your local drugstore and get them for 75% off. Not saying you need to buy it to eat the chocolate, although you should eat the chocolate, but this is a great template for making plates. And basically you're buying chocolate and getting a free template, right? So this is mine from Valentine's Day. We're gonna be using this. I have not even eaten all the chocolate out of it yet. Surprise, surprise. But I'll get there, don't worry, I'll get there. And so you'll want a rolling pin, a flat surface to work on, basic hand building pottery tools. That's it, super easy. I know Jennifer says, let's make a heart plate. Hello everybody tuning on in. Hey Sharon, hi Susan, hi Diana. So this is old school. Back when I was first learning to hand build, there wasn't a lot of the supplies that you can get now to make slab pottery. You basically had to figure it out yourself. We are very lucky now because there's a lot of companies out there, GR Pottery Forms, Sharon Hoppy Designs, Debbie Delacruz, her company does great templates too, and so doesn't Sharon. And I even have my own line of templates. But the fact is, you don't need that. And I know there's people outside of the US that are watching that can't get those things. So this is something for you, and also for everybody out there to realize you don't need a lot of fancy stuff to make pottery. So we're gonna do this. And I just wanna send you know, all kinds of prayers to the folks down in Texas. I live in Vermont. It is cold here. We have winters that are rough. We get a lot of snow, but I have lived in Texas. Actually, it's where I met my husband, and y'all don't get snow down there like we get snow. And it's just horrible what's going on, and those folks without power and all the horrible weather. Just everybody stay warm, stay safe, check on your neighbors. You know, if you know somebody that needs help, help them, take care of them, because that's what we all should be doing, is taking care of each other. So let's get going on this. Next Wednesday will be the start of ClayshareCon. And if you don't know what that is, go to claysharecon.com and check that out. But a little brief synopsis, it's a 5-day free online conference that we put on, that Clayshare puts on. We have demos, we have tutorials, we have giveaways, we have studio tours, factory tours, we're gonna have live videos, we're gonna have some recorded videos, we have an after party, so many great deals. They're doing kiln deals, speedball underglaze deal, Mako deals, GR Pottery Form deals, Sharon Hoppy is coming on. We have Flexi Bets, Debbie Delacruz, so many people, Studio Pro Bats, Amico, it just goes on, Diamond Core Tools. And since I'm talking about ClayshareCon, I gotta do it. This is my shirt from last year. This is ClayshareCon 2020 because this is our 2nd year doing it. But this year you can get yourself a ClayshareCon 2021 tee from claysharemarket.com. I'm wearing it, but it is cold, so I have layered up in a flannel and of course my Clayshare hoodie. So there's a little merch shout out for Clayshare. Hi, and I see some folks are tuning in. You're without power, except you have a generator, but you're here watching us on Wi-Fi. Sharon, stay warm. Stay warm, my dear. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut some...
The generator just running heat
and Clayshare. We have our priorities, heat and Clayshare, right? So I'm gonna cut off about 6 pounds of this. This is a 25-pound block. Half would be 12.5 pounds. Half of that would be about 6.25 pounds. So that's what I'm gonna go with. Probably not gonna need all this, but it's always better to have a little more clay than you need. And we're gonna roll a slab out by hand. But I do have a slab roller, and normally when I'm making pieces like this, I will roll out a big slab and then just cut what I need off of it. But I thought tonight we would roll a slab together. And I see, yeah, Mary says they're preparing for no power for about a week. It's winter. This winter's been a really, really, really rough one, hasn't it? All right, so we're gonna go ahead, and we have 3 cameras tonight, folks. So we're gonna switch to our side camera. This is the new side tutorial camera. I'm excited for this one. And I'm just gonna flatten this out, and I use a broken rolling pin to do this. Sharon says, I want my ClayShareCon t-shirt. Sharon, check your order online. Go check your order and see where it's at. And if you still can't find where your order is, email us and we'll hook you up. We'll find out where it is for you. We'll see what we can do. So I'm doing this because I cut off a great big chunk, and if I tried to just roll that big chunk, I'd be rolling for a while. So I like to beat the clay. It stretches it and starts to flatten it. Oh, I see all the folks are wearing their ClayShareCon shirts. Yay! I love my ClayShareCon shirts. I wear them after ClayShareCon. I'm wearing it before ClayShareCon because it's got the ClayShare logo. It's got this is the official ClayShare logo, and I need to do more with that logo. So we've almost, is it not focusing? It's going down.
The side view, I just have a still of it. Let me,
Kevin's going to try to fix that.
I'm going to remove it and bring it back in.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead now and roll this. And I have got just a regular old rolling pin. We're going to go to about 3/8 of an inch thick, 1/4 of an inch, somewhere in there. The thing about plates is if you make them too thin, they tend to warp. So you don't want it to be really paper thin. And I know we also, on the other hand, don't want it really thick, but you need to find that balance. And so I'm just turning this. And if you want a more formal video on this, I have a free how to roll out a slab video on clayshare.com. So if you're watching this and you're like, yeah, that's great, but I can't really see, or I'm having difficulties understanding how you're doing that, go watch that video. It's free. You can download the ClayShare app for free and watch it through that too. So just a few basics when you're rolling a slab. You want to roll to the end, but not off the end. That's how it works the best. And you just keep turning and stretching the clay as you go. Balmy 19 degrees in South Dakota. Warmest day you had all week. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly get to the point in the winter where I stop checking. It's just how it is. It's like, oh, it's February. It's Vermont. It's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. And that's just what you expect. I would be in shock if it was above like 30 degrees. If it ever got in the 40s, watch out. We're putting on shorts and having a picnic. Like that's how it goes here. You wait till April. April, and you have a day and you step outside and it'll be 43 and sunny, and you think it's summertime, you know? I'm ready to get like the kiddie pool out and having a beach party. All right, so I've rolled this out. It's about 3/8 of an inch thick. And now I'm going to use a yellow rib and just smooth it out. So this is all slab preparation. And you can do this beforehand, you know, if you want to do a bunch of slabs, you can do that. Or if you have a slab roller, save yourself the trouble, roll it out there, because it is easier. That's why I got a slab roller. I didn't want to be rolling out little bits of clay. I wanted to roll out a whole bunch of clay, have a great big long sheet that I can just cut what I need off of it, work on that throughout the whole day, and then the next day roll out another sheet of clay. Do I wedge my clay? Oh, I get asked this so much. Do I wedge the clay when I'm making slab pieces? Absolutely not. Ha! I know people are gonna freak out, but guess what? I have been hand building pottery for, I've been making pottery for over 20 years, mostly focusing on hand building for the last 10. Yeah, no, I do not wedge my clay when it's fresh from the bag. It's already de-aired. The factory has already done the work. By rolling out my slab like I did here, I've aligned the particles, I've done all the prep work that you really need to do. Wedging it would honestly probably just introduce more air bubbles than it needs. So no, I leave it. I just leave it. I know it's crazy, but it's how it is. So your kids in Texas have no power. I know. My cousin's in Texas, she has no power too. And she keeps reptiles. She works at a zoo and she has her own reptiles at home. And I've been thinking of her, Cousin Kelly, if you're watching. We're all praying and thinking of you down there in Texas. All right, so we've smoothed this out. So people want you to move. Are you seeing the comments? The small?
I moved it.
He did it. You ask, he does. He's so good.
Yeah, we lost the third cam though, so.
We lost the third one?
Just front and that one. We lost
the top?
Yeah.
Top doesn't matter anyways.
It doesn't like the 4K cams.
All right. So this is the top to my chocolate box. And that's what we're going to use as our template. You could use a paper plate of any design. You could use a plastic plate. You could use a template. The technique I'm going to show you here, you don't need any forms to drape it on. So basically all you need is some sort of shape. You could freehand draw a shape, any shape you want. But we're going to use this heart right here because I have it and I like to keep everything, and if I'm going to keep it, it has to have a use, right? Other than for storing chocolate in. All right, so here is my now template. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna cut this heart shape out. That's it. It's pretty simple. I'm just gonna use my clay knife, holding it straight up and down, cut, and then we'll go this side too. And so you're just cutting out a heart. You could use a giant cookie cutter if you had one. But like I said, this works perfectly fine. So if you got one of these, you could use that. All right, let me grab a workboard. These are great. Just a workboard. GR Pottery Form makes them. But any board will do. So what what clay works best for a handheld extruder? Yes, so if you're going to extrude anything, you want to use a clay without sand or grog because the extruder will catch those bits and they'll pull. So you're going to want to have a smooth clay, a nice smooth clay body. So I'm just going to sit this off to the side. Sorry, got to move my stool out of the way. There we go. So here we have now our heart. Look how cute. It could just be a trivet, right, if you wanted to. But we're gonna do stuff to it because we could leave it plain. You notice how I didn't use a rolling pin tad texture. Crazy, right? We're just gonna go ahead and smooth with a sponge the edges. And then take our fingers and round it over. So this is going to end up being the back side, and now we're going to flip the entire thing over. And we're going to do the same thing on what will become the front. So we're just using our sponge and our fingers to smooth this out. This clay is Laguna B-Mix 5 without grog. There's no grog in this clay. So B-Mix is a great clay for extruding. It's a great clay for wheel throwing and for hand building in general. There's lots you can do with it. right, so I do want to add some sort of decoration to the surface here, as I did in my first one. And this is for all of those folks out there who like to make all their own texture tools. I get you, because I have drawers of bisque stamps I've made, drawers of texture rolling balls, texture rollers. I make my own carved rolling pins, like I hand carve the clay. I have a class on making that. You can make your own textured rolling pin out of clay. So here are a bunch of little stamps, and there's a class on making these too that I have made over the years. They're all just little, little hand carved. There's a little fishy. That's a cute one. Make whatever you want. Here's a little iris. But I have this scrolling vine that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to decide how far in I want to go for my rim. Inch and a half. Inch and a half. So you could be really precise and draw an inch and a half. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and I am going to just use my finger, and it creates just a little shadow line. Now we're going to stamp with this stamp here. Ta-da! It's beautiful and easy. So we got one there, and then so I'm just going to use this stamp, and I'm going to turn it this way and that, just to keep the pattern from becoming repetitive and giving the piece more interest. So we'll turn it all over the place. And this is just a vining floral design that I carved into the clay. And you could do one too. I think we'll go this way. And then do one going up. This is the difficult part, the choosing which direction you stamp from. See how quickly this is? I know I'm always using rolling pins. My rolling pin line, the whole reason I started designing rolling pins is because I was always carving my own stamps and making my own patterns, and a lot of people wanted to get those designs. So that's why I started making my rolling pins, is so other folks could have my designs. And you know, not everybody likes to make their own stamps. And if you don't like to make your own stamps, it's great to have a source to buy them. So I'm going to take this other little stamp, and I'm just going to take it and fill in a few places. This is just a 3-petaled little flower that I'm just sticking in wherever I think it's needed. So there we have really pretty, maybe I'll go there, really pretty slab so you guys can see it. How easy is that, right? You were thinking it was a better view from the top?
No, we've got a conversation going on of where the picture-in-picture is best. In the lower corner or upper corner. I keep moving you around, and your work keeps chasing it.
That's how it goes. All right, so you've rolled your slab out, and it might be a little soft, really soft. And if that's the case, you can let this set for just a few minutes. But we have to make our bottom, and our bottom, as you can see here, and I'll actually turn it over and show you on this piece.
Oh, here, hang on.
It's just, you're going to take it to the big?
Yeah.
It's just a coil. It's just a coil we're going to make and roll it out by hand. So you don't need a foot maker, although I love my foot maker. You don't need it. This, we're going to make the bottom now. Look at this beautiful little bow we have on the back side of that. Like the shape, bows. I love it. It looks so dainty. It's very appropriate for a heart, isn't it? It's kind of lacy. Yeah. So we're going to set this to the side, and then we're going to grab our board back, and we're going to roll out a coil by hand. If you want to extrude a coil, if you don't roll coils, there's people out there don't want to roll coils. I can't blame them. So if you don't want to roll a coil, go ahead and extrude yourself a coil. I'm just going to cut this clay off this and set it to the side and use it later. Maybe in the class I'm teaching after this for just my premium members, where we're going to make a cozy cup. Maybe I'll use that clay there. All right, so these are just the scraps from making a bigger plate, and we're just going to wedge them up have ever used a glaze ink pad before? I'm not familiar with a glaze ink pad, like a stamp and then dip it in glaze, stamp it in the glaze and stamp it on the piece. I've done that. I've done that before. I actually have a class on it.
And people are like, oh wait, I really like that one.
So we're gonna roll this coil out. What thickness would I say it is? I have to think about it for a minute because I don't really usually think about how thick the coil is. And I don't roll a lot of coils these days. So it takes me a little while to get back in like the swing of it. But the key for rolling a coil is you want to roll away and pull back. So you're actually rolling and then you're just kind of pulling. Rolling and then pulling. See? Roll and then pull it back. See, I'm doing that with my fingers. You don't have to do that. I'm just trying to show that I'm not actually pushing down. It's the, it's really rolling out and then pulling it back. And if you notice your coil starts to go square on you, just kind of tap it a bit, and that can help to get it back to round. You can hear it when it's a little squared. And so I think this is why I switched to like the foot maker, because, you know, might not want to do this, but it is making our foot, which is very important for our shape. We have to have a foot to get our shape. So I'm going to say this coil is going to be about half an inch in diameter. I'll measure it. I'll measure it when I get done. So you want to get it even if possible. So let's check. Let's just do a check to see if our coil is going to be big enough. Let's flip our slab over. So we're flipping over our beautiful textured slab, our stamped slab, and let's see. We've got enough. We've got enough clay. We're going to do a mini heart right here for our foot. And I think I'm going to pinch that off there. It's pretty good. It's a little thick on this end. I want to roll it just a little bit more. Hi, Dory's new member tuning in. Hi, nice to see you from Asheville, North Carolina. I love Asheville. I love Biltmore. Goodness, love going down there and visiting. Okay, so we've got our coil. The length will be determined by the shape you're making. So there's not a one particular length. It's going to just be you figuring it out as you make this. This is all a very organic process, the making here. This is very much a, you know, you have a shape and then you're going to make a foot and it'll all work though, I promise. So, depending on how detail orientated you are, you might want to use a ruler to measure how far in you're going to mark it for your foot. Now, I like 1.25 to 1.5 inches from the edge. That's just me and my preferences, but you might like it to be a little smaller or a little bigger. So I'm going to just take this little color shaper here, and I'm just making little tick marks 1.5 inches in. And I honestly don't usually do this when I'm working, but when I'm teaching I do, because I'll have students who are really upset with having uneven feet, and until you've done it a while, it's hard to eyeball 1.5 inches, like to get an even foot. Nowadays, I hardly even measure for lids. I just throw, and it, you know, from doing it for so long, I can get my lid to fit perfectly. But you always want to measure twice and throw once. So now you have to eat all your chocolates to make a heart plate. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole, that's everything right there. Yep, that's right. So we're going to draw this heart, inside heart here. Connect our dots. It can be messy. Nobody's going to see this. This is going to go away. If you make it a little too narrow on one side, just scooch it out where it needs to be. Okay, so we have a drawing of a heart, a sketch, and we're going to slip and score that. I know my ClayShare family that's watching on here, you all who are with me on Monday mornings, we've gotten into this tradition where we eat or I eat chocolate 9 a.m. Well, usually it's about 10 a.m. Monday morning. You know, you all send me chocolates and I eat them, and I don't mind that at all. That's working out great for me. I've got zero complaints. My elliptical thanks you too, because I'm actually using it more often because I feel guilty because I'm eating all this chocolate. So I'm actually, you know, my iFit subscription is getting use. All right, so we slipped and scored there, but we need to work on our coil a bit. So we're going to take a damp sponge and we're just going to draw it down the coil. And as I do this, I'm putting a little pressure on it. It's forming the top almost into a triangle, the sides, and then it's flattening the bottom a bit. That flattened bottom is going to attach to the slab. So I'm pre-shaping my foot coil. So now we have something looking like this. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to slip and score the bottom of this. So it's almost like a triangle is what we just did. We triangled our coil. I don't know if that's a technical term. I'll make it up right now though. We can call it that. Well, I'm glad you're watching even though it's late in the Netherlands. Yeah. And I have to say, the way I'm making now is how I often teach my students, because, especially new students, because they won't have a lot of equipment, and this is a very straightforward approach. So we're just lining up our coil foot with all the score marks we made. And so this is very straightforward and easy. You don't have to worry about going out and buying a lot of stuff. You can just make. And don't get me wrong, I love stuff. I love all the tools and gadgets and things, but sometimes you don't always have them. So I cut through both coils with an angled bevel cut, and now we're going to slip and score. And we're just going to press them together. So we're smoothing them together and sealing that seam. So we've got the foot on, but we got to do a little work because the foot has to really bond to this. So I'm going to take my sponge. Oh, so Katie says it's an underglaze ink pad. So Katie, what I do is I make my own by using underglaze, and I spread it on a paper plate, and I use a brayer and roll through it and then just dip your stamp into it. I actually have a class on that, and we do that in the class. It's stamping with underglaze. I think that's what we call it. And so you should check that out, because if you like that technique, you might want to get one of those ink pads. So now we're going to use our fingers, making this little pinch form with our hands. We're going to just follow it around. And as I'm pinching it, I'm squeezing the clay between my fingers. It's making a really lovely shape on the sides. I'm also pressing downward a little bit, and that's bonding it to the slab. And if some of you out there are watching thinking, I've seen her do this somewhere, but where is it? If you have made my skinny olive tray, this is the technique I teach you in that class, which I learned from the fabulous Gail Kendall. So you might have seen it from her too, and she's been making pottery a lot longer than I have. So I just always like to shout out when I've learned something from somebody else. I mean, let's face it, we've all learned something. Everything we learn is pretty much from someone else, right? That's why it's called learning, not inventing, which is not a bad thing. Okay, so we've got this bonded really well, but I'm going to go in and swoop the side of my finger at the bottom here to make sure this joins. You don't want any cracks, and you want to make sure it's joined completely and smoothed out. And then we're going to do the same thing on the outside. I'm using my finger normally. I will use this guy right here This is a clay or color shaper, it's called. And I'll just drag that along. But I'm trying to keep this week's theme to minimalist pottery. That's what we could call this. So I'm trying not to use too many tools if I can help it. And then if you have one of these, you're going to want to go around the edge. I like the shadow line it creates. You don't need it. You can use the back end of a paintbrush and it will do a very similar job. You can use a bamboo skewer or a chopstick. That will also work well to do this too. I used to use the skewers a lot before I found this right here. What size color shaper? This one has no size. I bought it in a set. I would say it's probably an 8 if they have a size, like it looks similar to a size 8 round brush is what I would say. All right, so we've made our foot. Now we have the fun part ahead of us. Have a little magic. I'm checking, making sure it's sealed well. Our hands are the best tools, aren't they just? I agree with you. All right, so now we are gonna take another bat and we're gonna put it on top. I'm just making sure this is nice and level, tapping it down. And let's just see how sticky our slab is. Now you may have to let your slab sit for a few minutes. If it's too wet, it'll slump more than you want it to. Mine's a little on the wet side, but we're going with it because it's live and I have no other option. So I'm just going to flip the whole thing over and then we'll release it from the bat. And we have a little slumping on the edges, but watch. Just go ahead and grab them and curl it up. All the way around. Now if you wanted to add a ruffle to this, you can. It's up to you. You can curl it up as much as you want, or you can keep your plate more flat. I like to curl it up. Because I feel like if I want a flat plate, I don't think I would have put the foot on it. But you can if you want to. And then I need my rib. This is a red rib right here. And we are going to use this rib and we're going to follow the contours of that foot ring with the rib. And this creates that bowed shape I was showing you at the beginning. And that's because I don't want it to be flat. If you want it flat, you don't do this step, right? You leave this step out. But I'm very gently smoothing this along and it's shaping it and creating almost a bowl in here. It's supposed to be a deep dish pie plate. And then maybe we'll ruffle. If you find your clay is too wet at this point, ruffling always helps it hold its shape, just so you know. So you can always add a few little ruffles to it.
That's a good question from Taylor right here.
You want to make a heart wall hanging. How would you round or give shape to the heart so that's not flat? So you could go ahead and you could take your little slab and you could drape it over a bowl and smooth it. We do that, I have a class where we do that with something. Hold on, I'm thinking. When I make lids, when I make hand-built lids often, like in the canister class, we flipped it over and we smoothed it out to give it volume. So that's how you make a flat shape have volume. And so I would go ahead and take your slab and drape it. You could drape it over a bowl if you have a mold for it, or just any bowl, but I find, ooh, it worked out perfect. Doesn't always happen. So I'm going to go back and just really define these ruffles. The ruffles are optional. So you need something you can drape it over that you can then push down, kind of like I'm doing here, right? Similarly to this. So the ruffles, add a little ruffles if you want. You don't have to. I did because my slab was a little wet, and that's a good way to save a slab when it's a little too wet. You could also, on the other hand, if you make a piece and you realize it's too wet in the sides, the rim is sagging. Here's something I used to use all the time for my students, because we would, when I was teaching college classes, they only had so much time and then they had to leave. They didn't have an option. So we would take plastic and you crumple it up under, and in my, I think I call it my jellyfish bowl, but in that class we do this. Is that what it is, the jellyfish bowl? The jellyfish bowl. We do this, and so you use the plastic around it because it's really easy to form it to your shape, and that will hold my sides up, so I don't have to worry about the sides collapsing on me as it dries. And then when it dries enough, usually the next day, you know, I'll cover this with plastic too, the top with plastic. So I'm going to move these out. So I don't think I really need them, but for drying purposes, I will just do this. I'll just drape it like that with plastic, and that seems to work really, really well as far as keeping it from drying too fast. Because I'm running a heater, it's way too fast in my studio if I didn't drape it. And then I do have the one that I made that doesn't have the ruffles, so you can see both options, ruffles, no ruffles. And I don't know if you'll have a problem with bowing or warping, which can happen as it dries. So what I will do is, once it's sat at least a day covered, yeah, once it's sat a day covered and it's stiff enough that it can take the weight, I will use weight bags and I will just set them in, because if you put these in too soon, what will happen is you'll get sagging and it will sag your beautiful plate, and you don't want that to happen. So I wait a day. If it's still too wet, I wait longer. It's all dependent on the clay. This one here, at this point, I'm still going to weigh it. I like to keep them weighed until they're 100% dry. I'm really, really always overcautious about warping, but you don't have to. I mean, depends on your clay. Yes, so like the wok mold, that would work great, Terry. Or you could make your own bowl mold out of coils, which I have a class on, and that would work really well too. Now for finishing work on this, we already smoothed the edges out when we were making it, but it can never hurt to go back over and just smooth your edges. And I'm just going to use my sponge to smooth it out, just like that. And we've got this fabulous heart plate, and all we made it with was some clay, our hands, rolling pin, because you got to roll it out, and a chocolate box. So you can make these big, you can make them little. They make these hearts in all different sizes. You do not have to use hearts though. You could get paper plates that you like the design of and do the same thing that I did here with the paper plates. You could use plastic plates. You can use basically anything you have, placemats, or if you have some templates you want to use, you could use those as well. It's entirely up to you. It's pretty easy though. You did the coil mold class, gonna biscuit in a few days. Evelyn says, yeah, and you know, those classes are so easy because you make your own tools. You make your own tools, which is like, then especially if you can't get them where you are, or if, you want to try your hand at making your own, that's what they're for. So I want to catch up on comments. So even after slowly drying and wrapping in plastic, your plate warped between bisque and glaze fire. So it warped, it was bisqued, and it was fine during the bisque, but then when you glazed it and put it in the glaze, you got it out of your glaze, it was warped. If that happens then, usually it's one of a few things. So sometimes, although it looks like there's not a warp in it, it has a memory. Clay has a memory, and so that warp that you didn't think was there will show up later, and you'll end up with a warp. The other thing that can happen is if the shelf you are glaze firing on is not completely level, a nice beautiful flat shelf, or if you span it across two shelves, that causes warping in the glaze fire. I see that all the time. So make sure the shelves that you're using are completely flat. And also make sure your foot is flat. If you have a wobble on your foot to begin with, that can get worse as you fire it. So those are some of my suggestions for it. Clay is it's an interesting thing because you can seemingly do every single thing right and it can still crack. You can be making pottery for over 20 years and you can come out to your studio like I did today to load a piece that yesterday was bone dry, no cracks, but today has a crack in the rim. So, I mean, things happen with pottery. We think we're being careful, but cracks show up. And sometimes there's really no explanation. If it's a thing that happens constantly for you, and you keep getting cracks the same way or warpage the same way, then something about your process you need to adjust. And because that's the only variable, right? That's all it can be. And it's just sitting down and analyzing your process and how you're making and seeing if there's what you're doing, and at some point there's something happening. Whether when you're peeling your slab up, maybe you torque it one way a little bit, that can actually come back and haunt you. So what I mean is, I'll show you an example. Here we have a slab of clay, right? And I'm just going to smooth it out. And I'm going to use this to make something, and I've got it stuck to the board, and I need to release it from the board, right? And I'm going to pull it up, and as I pull it up, oh, I twisted it a lot. But it still looks flat when I lay it back down, right? But it's flat now. That twist didn't matter. Clay has a memory. That twist can matter. And that torquing, that pulling, this twisting motion I'm doing right here, even though it will lay flat, because I've done that now, that's in the clay. That's part of the clay's memory. It could become a beautiful tray, flat completely, and in the glaze fire, it could do that to me. So when we're peeling our slabs up, we have to be conscious about every motion. And so this, smoothing it down right now, I'm realigning the particles, right? So I'm sort of negating what I just did to it with that torquing. So now this piece, well, we flip it over, and we do the other side. That should take care of that, and I shouldn't have a warp issue. But if you didn't do that, you can. So I know it's funny because clay is so simple, but sometimes it can be so difficult. So I hope that helps. So you worry about spanning shelves with large pieces. So Catherine, I never span my shelves. I just get bigger shelves. They do make really big kiln shelves, and they're heavy. When you get thick ones, a company called Advancer makes these really lovely thin ones. They're very expensive, but they're light, and you can get them in all sizes. So for me right now, I have a platter that is too big to fit in my current kiln because it's a rectangle, not a rounded platter. So that guy's gonna have to wait until my new kiln comes this summer. That I just told everybody I'm buying a new kiln. Clayscapes is having some great deals coming up for Clayshare Con, and I couldn't resist, so I am getting a new kiln. I'm getting a short, big kiln for big platters. And because the best time to buy is with Clayshare Con starting, and so that's why I'm buying it. Yeah. So is there something wrong with that heart-shaped chocolate box? Doesn't look like there's many, right? Well, I'll tell you what happened with this, Nona. There's a lot of chocolates left. This was given to me on Valentine's Day, which was Sunday, And I only ate a couple out of the box. But then the next morning, Monday morning, we had our Good Morning ClayShare broadcast. And 3 of our members sent me chocolates, although I only ate the chocolates from 2 of our members because I couldn't eat all the chocolate. It was too much. It was just too much for me to eat that much. So I have chocolate from Amy to eat next week. So that's why there's still chocolate in here, because these are sealed up really well. The other chocolates are handmade. And so these I know will keep for a while, but the handmade chocolates that I got, I'm eating those. Maybe more than I should be, but they're very good.
I can help you with those.
You can. So Kathy, you have a problem with just the rims of your plates warping. The inside is nice and flat. So that can happen during the drying as well. So when you cover with plastic, make sure it's covered in a way that it's evenly covered. If you have it covered, so you cover it like this, and it's wrapped up or tucked up there, and one side is left slightly open like this, air is going to get in here and dry a certain area faster, and that will cause warping. So that's one way warping can happen. Another thing that isn't necessarily warping, but when you're making, they might not be completely even. So what you want to do is you want to either get down on eye level or bring it up to your eye level, and you want to check your piece to make sure that you can see, is that even, right? To make sure that rim is even. And the other thing that happens, there's a couple other things that, there's always more than one thing, right? Your clay could be too thin, or your rim can be too big. If people make their rims too wide, anything over 1.5 inches is asking to slump and warp. When you get into 2-inch 2-inch rims, unless you're making giant platters that are almost 1 inch thick, you're running the risk of warping. So great big rims tend to warp. That's why I don't usually make my rims more than 1.5 inches, usually 1.25 inches, because they do warp. You know, and that's something that I don't want to have happen. So I'm glad I checked this, because I see an area here that I need to use my color shaper to seal up. Like, it probably would have been fine, but it's just the little details like that that I want to make sure it looks good and functions well. So I hope that was helpful with the rims.
A lot of people now want to know which kiln you're getting.
So if you want to do super big pieces, which you all know I do a lot of big platters for my work in the studio and my artwork, you know, for the work I teach, but also my own personal artwork. I do these great big soldier plates, and I want to go bigger. And I am getting the E28S. So it's the short, it's only 2 levels high, but it's 28 inches across. So it's the E28S3 with the quad elements, and I'm also going to have elements in the floor as well, because I want it to heat up as evenly as possible. And I will hook it up to a vent, and I will buy the Genesis controller. Actually, the Genesis controller is a free upgrade during ClayShareCon that Clayscapes is doing when you buy a kiln with kiln furniture or a vent. So you need furniture. So if you're going to buy a kiln, get your furniture, and then you get the upgrade to the Genesis controller. Why do you think I'm buying it? It just makes sense, right? So, and I already have a vent, so I'm good with that. So that's what I'm getting. And so now you can see if this will focus. You can see that it looks pretty even. Thank you, Catherine. I'm trying to do better with the wrists. At this point, it's only 2 weeks to my surgery, so I'm just like, I'm terrible. So that's a heart platter, and it's really easy. Is it focused back?
I haven't snapped back to you yet.
How is it now? I can't reach it, so I can't focus it. I could wave. Nope, I can't reach the focus. You'll have to come to the front of the...
Screen do it?
I don't know. Maybe. Did it do it?
I think so.
It's a smart camera. So I'm just trying to catch up on your comments. You think you missed this live? Oh, I know. So Linda, hi, you made it though. We're at the very end. You're going to try to make this. I think you guys should. This technique, what I just did here, you could also use a clay that's suitable for baking, and this could become a baking dish. You could actually make a pie plate like this if you use a clay that is really good for baking. For me, that would be Laguna number 60, or you could use B-mix with grog. You do want a groggy clay or any clay that handles thermal shock, repeated thermal shock really well. But I like it with the ruffles. And then here's the unruffled. Let me grab that. So we got both versions here. We have just your simple, no ruffles, but still beautiful, ruffled. So you get to choose ruffly heart, smooth heart. So if your bisque piece is warped, can it unwarp during the glaze fire? And it can. I know, clay is a funny creature. I have had pieces that were warped, like the foot, it was a wobble and it was bisqued, and I was like, oh, I don't want to throw this away, it's already bisqued, I'm gonna see if I can save it. And I fired it on a shelf that was completely flat, and because the kiln gets hot enough that the clay softens and starts to almost slump a little bit, it kind of rests itself. It's almost like taking a deep breath, like like letting one out, right? Letting a deep breath out, like. So when we do that motion, we're out. Think of your clay when it's firing. It's like letting a breath out. And it kind of slumps down a little bit. And if it's on a flat shelf and it's a little warped, it can fix itself. That's why we have the problem when you have a warped shelf of it warping, because it could have been completely fine, and then that warped shelf puts the warp in it. Clay, what can we say? We love it. All right, so I hope you all try this class. I think you will really love it. I see you have Wednesday and Thursday out for ClayShare Con. Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good. So it starts next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you're watching this live, it'll be live everywhere here except Instagram folks who are watching. I don't think I'll be doing Instagram. Are we going to do Instagram? Maybe. Maybe. It's a big maybe, but it's a maybe. We'll see what happens with that. But that starts next week. It is from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday. Except Friday, we're gonna have an after party starting at 6. I just know there's gonna be a lot of awesomeness happening on the after party. There's gonna be some fire and flame and good stuff and a little competition and fun times happening during that. But we'll be doing demos. We'll have hand building demos, wheel throwing demos. We have Sharon Hoppy's going to do some demos. GR Pottery Forms is going to have Jeff on every day. He is doing a demo, which is pretty fabulous. I think we're giving away Clayscapes glazes every day. We're giving 2 prizes from them every day. A 6-pack, I believe, of my glazes every day from them. Drew, if you're on, confirm, but I'm pretty sure. Is there a list of kilns available? So Lisa, as in stock, my kiln is going to be about 3-4 months. I've already ordered it. I talked to Drew about it, like in the last few days. And it's going to be 3 to 4 months before I get my kiln. So they might have some that are coming out sooner, but there is a wait list for kilns. Everybody wants a kiln right now. So check with Clayscapes and they'll tell you if your goal is to get a kiln ASAP, they'll tell you what kilns they can get the fastest. Me, I just need the particular size. I didn't want to get a new kiln, but I'm not going to stop making big pots. So I had no choice. Oh, so Michael's having his surgery on Tuesday. I get mine on Thursday, March 4th. We'll be healing together. We'll be healing buddies. Surgery buddies. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this fun tutorial. We learned how to make this from a chocolate box. That's right. And you can make it from anything. You don't need a chocolate box, but chocolate's fun to eat. So get yourself the box and then use it for making your hearts. Check out clayshare.com and claysharecon.com. And I will see everybody next week. Geez, my next public broadcast is ClayShareCon next Wednesday, 10 a.m. I'll see y'all there. All my premium members, we have a make-along class tonight, a live class where we are making a cozy cup. We'll be doing that in just a few minutes, so I'll see you all in about 15. Bye, everybody. Hey, Insta folks.